the most harmful legacy bad parenting leaves behind is shame. In saying that, the most effective healing step we can take towards an incredible life is releasing it. You're listening to the Science and Spirit of Happy podcast, where we discuss the rational, strategic, and psychological methods, but also the deeper reasons and spiritual philosophy behind being happy down to the soul. Happiness isn't just hedonism. It's not even solely personal. Getting happy dramatically increases your effectiveness in every area, from business and finance to relationships. When we align with our own personal version of ideal, we end up not just happier, but healthier, more whole, more successful and richer, but even loving and loved. It's my opinion that getting happy for yourself is the absolute best way to serve the people in your life. I'm your host, Laura Lee Bowers, master healer and academic researcher, and this is another episode diving into the science and spirit of happy, a logical path to soul. Get it, y'all! Welcome back! Okay, we are on the step six. Okay, it's episode 7 in the 3rd season, but this is step 6 because the first episode was actually an introduction to the whole concept. So we're talking about the personal powers. We're walking you through the 8 personal powers that belong to the sustainable dreams theory, my academic and spiritual strategy to making holistic change that facilitates getting to really big goals really easily. So really big goals typically include, big lifestyle changes. So the way that we were raised dramatically impacts every single facet of our lifestyles, and it becomes largely unconscious. We mostly operate on the unconscious level, what we do. So getting to change that really requires a truly holistic approach. And in doing the truly holistic approach, it not just makes it effective and sustainable, as the name of the method suggests, but it also makes it almost, I'm going to say effortless. I do say effortless, although there requires lots and lots of little efforts to choose and to be consciously choosing to change. But really, what it sets you up to do is almost follow the path of least resistance towards your biggest goals. Now, in saying that, there are quite a few roadblocks in the way to this, and they're micro traumas. I've talked about this a bit, and I talk at length, and I teach about it, and I teach about healing these things. In my membership, in my courses, in my books, etc. However, healing them really is the easiest thing. Healing them is easier than not healing them. So when I say the path of least resistance, I mean that in the semi-long run, it's easier than staying the same. In the natural flow of life, this is the path that everything is leading you down. These roadblocks can be quite scary, though, especially without understanding, what they're really made of. So right now, in this 6th step, in the 6th personal power, we are in the layer of energy and soul, right? Soul is kind of the you-ness that exists on the layer of energy in the world, right? And one of the biggest blocks to soul is shame. One of the biggest blocks to our energy is shame. One of the biggest blocks to getting aligned is that shrinking feeling that there's something wrong with you. And that's the difference between shame and guilt. Shame says there's something wrong with you, whereas guilt says there's something wrong with what you did. There's a very big difference between these two things. One is fixable. There's something wrong with what you did. Therefore, you can do something about it. And shame is not fixable. There's something wrong with who you are fundamentally. And guilt belongs mostly to the heart set, to the heart layer, because it's really tied to empathy. But values, your personal values, that is a soul level thing. So doing something about your guilt, that is a soul level thing. It's because you feel like you should. You could feel bad for someone, sometimes we have to make really hard decisions or we have to have hard conversations. You can feel bad for someone. You could feel bad for, doling out a punishment to your child. You can feel bad for having to bring up something that's going to hurt somebody's feelings because, you have to. But you're not going to do something different because of that bad feeling, because of your values, right? In your soul. So shame belongs to the spirit too. It belongs on the realm of energy because you can't do anything about it. There's something wrong with you. This really attacks us on a values level, on a fundamental level. So what you intuitively think about when you think about your soul, right? You think about the thing that, maybe survives you, before, after, maybe gets reincarnated into different lives or goes to heaven. Or not, I guess. So this shame, the ancients equated this soul to, the primal essence of who you were as a person, and kind of what made you a human was the soul. So this kind of level of like constricting, shrinking, this feeling or sense of shame is destructive at a level that we can't even comprehend. And the story I'm going to tell you, I actually got up to write it in the middle of the night. It started just rolling through my head in the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep. And I got up to write this down because I carried this shame for 7 years. I've even talked about it in different podcast episodes. So I want to tell you this story to illuminate what I'm talking about. Because today we are talking about the personal power of confidence. And confidence comes from a soul level. It comes from your values. It comes from a place that is so rooted in who you are underneath everything. And confidence can allow you to create whatever you want. And shame will constrict it into such a tight spot that it can't move forward. And this shame that I carried for 7 years broke in the middle of the night. And it was like a light switch going up. Suddenly the lights are on, and that's it. I was recruited into academic editing while I was still in university, in my last years of university before going on to, I was planning and had everything in place to go on to become, an academic scholar and researcher. Decided to do this instead. Another story. I was recruited into academic editing. The CEO of a local editing company or a publishing company, came to my university to do a presentation at a conference about what academic editing entailed. So he had a bunch of trick edits, right? He had a bunch of trick edits that he was showing us. It was supposed to be a little bit of like a fun, interactive game, but he was honestly, I think like he was really trying to impress upon the audience
the level of skill and how interesting, academic editing can be with these trick edits. So I kept finding every single one. And the CEO was so impressed, he offered me a job at the end of the conference. He called me aside, asked one of my professors like who I was, called me aside, offered me a job. So I rock up, some woman in the office, now I know in hindsight, was totally jealous of me, okay? And in hindsight, I didn't know at the time, I didn't know what was happening. In hindsight, I realized from conversations or whatever, this woman was picking every single thing I did apart. Everything I did. She was taking what I did and like rewriting it, okay? Redoing every single thing I did. I was bounced around from job to job because the CEO wanted me to take his position as liaison between professors and the company. Okay. He was gearing up for like going into semi-retirement. He wanted to keep me in the company, even though this woman who was in a much higher position than me, obviously, was just gunning for me to be not with the company. This man believed in me so much. He wanted me to take one of his jobs. So I finally landed in this simple job that I was terrible at. I was absolutely terrible at. But I saw some opportunities because the whole section was being run really poorly. And I decided at that point that I was going to start my own editing company. And, just to give you like kind of a background of like who I was as a student, the president of my university, when I told him that I was starting an editing company, he told me to forward my information, my business information to him because his office would use me. Okay. Just to give you a little bit of a background on like who I am and what kind of work I was known for and that I was capable of doing, that I was doing. Okay. Not just capable of doing. We're talking about like capacity versus what you're doing, but what I was doing, what I was demonstrating, the work that I was doing. So this section of the company was in desperate need of modernization. So I streamlined the processes of how this work was being done. I outsourced tedious tasks for like a fraction of the cost. I made a mistake in hiring and I explained myself. I was reprimanded like I did something wrong, like what I was doing outsourcing these tasks was dishonest. I was completely straight up about me starting an editing company. I also saved them money and had plans to completely streamline their whole system, saving them a massive amount of funds. So they screwed me over. And I was actually planning a win-win for us. Now, that is the reality of what happened in this situation. The reality was I got screwed over. And what happened from that because of my trauma, okay, I carried the shame from that for years. Probably because of my trauma, I didn't explicitly say everything that I was doing. I was, trying to figure it all out and then, put my process to the CEO. I was planning on taking over the entire unit because that's who I am. That's who I was in school. That's who I am now. But I carried this shame for years. And I even mentioned it in the first season. I was talking about getting over shame. When you have intrusive thoughts of shame pop up, this was exactly the thought that I was thinking of, that I had acted outside of integrity. And what I said in that episode, when these intrusive thoughts of shame come out, say, so what? So what? I acted out of integrity. And what I meant by that was that I acted outside of integrity. But even the language, the way that it came out when I was coming up against that feeling of shame, even though I was admitting to myself with my language, so what? And I was feeling the shame like I deserved it. I deserved to feel that shame because I acted outside of integrity. I still use the words, I acted out of integrity. What I meant was I acted outside of integrity, but the words were, I acted out of integrity. meaning my actions were coming out of integrity. I did a great job. I was discriminated against by a woman who I'm sure is very talented in many ways, but is a loser comparatively. She's a loser comparatively. Only losers attack their subordinates because they're jealous. Now, actually, as I'm saying this, she was probably jealous because she knew that he had me in mind to take over some of his responsibilities as he was moving into retirement. She probably wanted that job. It involved a lot of traveling, hanging out with rock stars, rock star academics at all these universities across North America. That is probably a large part of what she didn't like about me and why she probably wanted to get rid of me. Screw her. I did a great job. The CEO obviously knew it. It's not like I did really crappy, editing work and he was like, oh, still gonna keep her around to take my job, even though she can't. No, he knew I was doing great work and he should have stood up for her. He should have stood up for me. He should have stood up for the person who was doing the great job, who he knew was doing the great job. He should have stood up to that woman who he knew probably was just jealous. I was the rock star, and I know I was killing it because the tasks that I was given, I was writing for students. I was doing the writing for students. I was clarifying academic articles for students to be able to understand. I also have a background in theory, which means I grasp large concepts very, very well, and I am able to string together a lot of different pieces of information to make a coherent whole. So I'm very, very good to look at an academic argument and clarify it, as you can see from my work now. This is how my mind works. But especially because I was writing this for students, as I'm a student, I was doing footnotes for clarity. I was clarifying arguments. I was using this theoretical background. That's very rare. Not a lot of people think this way or are able to grasp the big concepts, which means I'm weak in other areas, but that's another conversation. I was writing study questions for students, okay? I know I was good. I know I was doing good work. I went back and I looked over because I was so interested in clarifying. I was so interested in doing the job well. So I was interested in gaining the knowledge. Where was I going wrong? Because this was being sort of brought to my attention, not really just being like, oh, well, so-and-so is not that happy with your work or whatever, and this or that. So I went back through all of the work that I had done that she redid, and her work completely lacked clarity and form. Okay, the study questions, etc., were not insightful whatsoever. It wasn't good work. They did me wrong. They did me wrong. They did me wrong. Not just her. Okay, they did me wrong, and that's why the feeling kept coming back. Not because I should feel ashamed. Because I needed to process that. This is confidence. And it comes from comfort. It comes from comfort. It comes from being comfortable with myself. It comes from having the comfort to seek whether I did something wrong. Because if I was really uncomfortable with the fact that I did something wrong, I wouldn't have gone back and looked. If I was really uncomfortable with, the fact that I did something wrong or whatever, I might even not be willing to look at this, but I was willing to look at it. And being able to stand up for my own values and see something like this clearly really is confidence. So I want to tell you what happened, okay? Because here I am years after this. Here I am mentoring other people on confidence. I want to tell you how this happened. This realization came flooding to me when I was choosing to be confident. And you might remember, if you watched or listened to the first couple episodes of this season, or the first couple of personal powers, I was talking about how I had this tenant who just like, he rocked me with his crazy exploits, okay? That this person just being so triggered into a trauma state really triggered me into really doubting myself. I was doubting my abilities. I was doubting my worth. I was doubting my choices. I am living in Thailand right now on my way to moving to Australia permanently with my family. And we need to figure out how that's actually going to come to pass as we go. Okay. This is very expensive. This is, it would be really risky if I wasn't so sure that we could do it. This is like a next level thing. I started this new business. Like everything, this is such a huge move in my life. And this person just had me like doubting whether I was worthy or whether I could do any of it. And because I sought connection, I was talking about how, I sought connection, understanding that I was being rocked into this self-doubt because of this person, because of this situation. I recognized that I was feeling self-doubt and this situation was happening and I was seeking connection. Like, are these things actually linked? Am I, getting some kind of insight, or am I being triggered into, destructive, constricting patterns? And, saying this, and we're talking about jealousy, which is an energy thing. It's totally a soul thing. The feeling of jealousy is a twisted energy on the energetic realm. I think when that man came to move into my apartment, that man told me that he really wanted to move to Thailand. He didn't want to live in Canada anymore. He wanted to move to Thailand. He wanted to move to the islands where we're living. And I'm sure that anybody who would want to move to Thailand would probably love to move to Australia. And that's what we were doing. I don't doubt for a second that it is entirely possible that his explosive way of I don't even want to, just destructive, hell-bent, craziness came from insane jealousy. That we were doing what he wanted to do. But because I sought the connection, and hey, I'm doing all of these things because I've done all these steps. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm living my dream. Like, it might not be your dream to live in Australia. I know people that don't like Australia that much. I love it. This is my dream. I'm doing my dream because you can do your dream too. Because of all of these steps, because I created this life for myself. And you can too. It isn't because I'm better than this person. It's because I chose. And it's obvious with, that man that he didn't choose. Maybe he should take my course. But because I saw the connection and I knew the path through the sets, right, through the personal powers, I was able to get to the point where I could choose confidence. Okay. And this is when the just do it kind of strategy, or the just do it approach to personal development actually works. Okay. It's when you're healed. It's when you've grown and you've strengthened in the personal powers, and you know the stuff and you've been through the stuff, and you just have to change the programming. You just have to make the choices to like switch the programming. I chose confidence. And this weird shame story that I had been holding for 7 years just popped. So first, you have to build confidence. So the first steps are that you build the personal powers. You heal and you grow and you strengthen them. So you heal and you grow and you strengthen and you build your confidence through steps 1 to 5. 5 is confidence. So clarity, connection, fierceness, freedom, comfort with yourself, which is self-acceptance, and then confidence. 6 through 8 are when you can simply choose it. You get to the point where you can simply choose these things. So when you develop, you can simply choose these things and have these kinds of breakthroughs, which is why it's like doing this little hard things makes life so much easier. And doing the little easy things makes so much harder. And that's why this approach is so much easier than staying the same. So the more comfortable you are with yourself, the easier all of these steps are. All of the personal powers. The more comfortable you are with yourself, the easier it is. So the path to comfort is 1 through 4, and each personal power builds exponentially upon one another. Just like building comfort will help you with fierceness, which will help you with freedom, etc. Like all of the personal powers help exponentially with one another. And I talked about having clarity without connection. So I talked about this tenant who had, grabbed data points, clarity points, like I see this going wrong and I see that going wrong, but completely lacked the connection to see the bigger picture of what was actually happening. And he went crazy. So having like confidence without having comfort in yourself, and being able to drop into who you truly are is, a recipe for disaster too. Having, fierceness, like feeling how you feel without the freedom to express yourself is also like a recipe for turmoil. But can you imagine for a second if you had the clarity to know like what you think, what you want, and the connection to look at like who can help you and what you need, and then the fierceness to feel how you feel truly, the freedom to express it, like express how you feel authentically with empathy. And then the comfort in yourself to drop into whoever you are, whatever your shortcomings you have, wherever you are right now, and the confidence to move forward towards the person that you truly are and truly want to be. I mean, those things together, you're unstoppable. You can create anything. You can do anything. I was talking about vulnerability in the last district, in the heart-set district, right? The fierceness and the freedom. This is really vulnerability, being vulnerable with yourself to feel how you feel, and then being vulnerable to other people, sharing yourself authentically. And I was mentioning that vulnerability is really requires boundaries. Otherwise you can't have vulnerability, or you have this vulnerability that's like a personal power without the other personal powers that actually becomes like a hindrance. It actually becomes something like that's dangerous to you without boundaries. So you enforce boundaries by understanding your values. So boundaries are on the layer of values. And this makes a lot of sense, right? When we're talking about shame and we're talking about taking on the shame or not taking on the shame, we're talking about boundaries. We're talking about boundaries, and really good boundaries that actually go down to the soul level come from values. So small constricting people will always try to do the same to you, okay? It's up to you to say yay or nay. You decide whether to take that into your soul, whether you'll do that work for them. This should come from your values, not theirs. This is a constant threat, and confidence is the way that you make it so that it isn't dangerous to you anymore. So we have reached the end of the kind of internal districts. And next week, we're going to be talking about the personal powers of being able to walk and do these things and get these goals and live this life in the last layer of body. So I'll see you next week, y'all. If you want more, get the book. Everything is laid out in there, and there'll be exercises for you to build confidence as well as all of the other personal powers. But until next week, good day, y'all.